The stars looked different here. Captain Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the HSS Liberty, watching the alien constellations through the main view screen. After 6 months of traveling through hyperspace, his small research ship had finally reached the edge of known space. The mission was simple: explore new worlds, study alien life, and report back to Earth. What could go wrong? "Captain, we're picking up some strange readings," said Ryan Clark from the communications station. The young officer had been with the Liberty for 2 years, and Jake trusted his judgment. "There's definitely something out there." Jake walked over to Ryan's station and looked at the displays. The screens showed energy signatures that didn't match anything in their databases. "Are they ships?" "I think so, sir. Big ones. Really big ones." Dr. Amy Foster, the mission's lead scientist, joined them at the communications station. She was one of the smartest people Jake had ever met, and her curiosity about alien life had driven her to volunteer for this dangerous mission. "How big are we talking about?" Ryan checked his instruments again. "The largest one is about 10 times the size of our ship, maybe bigger." Jake felt a cold knot form in his stomach. The Liberty was not a warship. It was a research vessel with a crew of 43 scientists, engineers, and support staff. They had some basic defensive systems, but nothing that could stand up to real military ships. Any idea who they belong to? "No, sir. The energy patterns are completely unknown, but they're definitely artificial." Lisa Thompson, the ship's chief engineer, called out from her station across the bridge. "Captain, we've got company. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace around us." The main view screen lit up with new contacts. 7 massive ships materialized in space around the Liberty, forming a perfect circle. Each one was sleek and dark, with weapons that could probably destroy the human ship with a single shot. The largest vessel was enormous, easily the size of a small city. "Oh no," Amy whispered. "This is not good." Jake tried to stay calm, but his heart was racing. He had been a ship captain for 15 years, but he had never faced anything like this. "Ryan, try to establish communication. Let them know we come in peace." "Yes, sir." Ryan's fingers flew over his controls, broadcasting on all standard frequencies. The response came quickly. A harsh alien voice filled the bridge, speaking in a language that sounded like grinding metal mixed with thunder. The ship's computer tried to translate, but the results were confusing. "The translation software is having trouble," Ryan said. "I'm getting something about surrender and immediate destruction and imperial law. That doesn't sound friendly," Lisa said from her station. Doc Jake took a deep breath. "Keep trying to communicate. Tell them we're explorers from Earth. We mean no harm." The alien voice came back, louder and more aggressive this time. The computer's translation was clearer now. "Unknown vessel, you have entered Imperial space without permission. Surrender immediately or face destruction. You have 30 seconds to comply." "Imperial space?" Amy asked. "We had no idea this area was claimed by anyone." Jake felt sweat running down his back. 30 seconds was not enough time to think of a solution. The alien ships had them completely surrounded, and there was no way to escape. "Ryan, send a message. Tell them we're peaceful explorers and we didn't know this was their territory." "Sending now, sir." The response was immediate and terrifying. One of the smaller alien ships fired a beam of bright energy that passed just in front of the Liberties. Bow! The ship shook from the energy discharge, and several warning lights flashed on the bridge. "That was a warning shot," Lisa said, her voice tight with fear. "The next one won't miss." Jake's mind raced. They were completely outgunned and outnumbered. Running was impossible with 7 ships surrounding them. Fighting would be suicide. But surrendering to an unknown alien empire didn't seem like a good option either. "Captain," Ryan said quietly, "they're demanding our surrender again. They want us to shut down our engines and prepare to be boarded." Amy moved closer to Jake. "What are we going to do?" Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These people had trusted him to lead them safely through their mission. Ryan was barely 25 years old. Lisa had 2 young children back on Earth. Amy had spent her whole life dreaming of meeting alien species, but probably not like this. The alien voice spoke again, even more threatening than before. The computer translated, "This is your final warning. Surrender now or be destroyed. Imperial law demands immediate compliance from all inferior species." "Inferior species?" Amy said angrily. "Who do they think they are?" Jake was thinking fast. The aliens seemed to expect immediate surrender from anyone they encountered. That suggested they were used to being the strongest force in any situation. But what if they weren't dealing with a weak exploration ship? What if they thought they were facing something more dangerous? "Ryan," Jake said slowly, "when you send our next message, I want you to make it sound official. Very official, sir." Jake walked to the center of the bridge, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "Open a channel to all the alien ships." "Channel open, sir." Jake cleared his throat and spoke in his most authoritative voice. "This is Captain Jake Martinez of the human space service vessel Liberty. We are a diplomatic courier operating under the authority of the Earth Alliance. Our mission is peaceful, but we are not defenseless." He paused, hoping his voice sounded more confident than he felt. "We were not aware this system was claimed. However, any hostile action against a diplomatic vessel will be considered an act of war against humanity. I strongly advise you to reconsider your current course of action." The bridge was silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Jake could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. He had just claimed to represent an Earth alliance that didn't exist and threatened aliens who could destroy his ship without effort. "Captain," Lisa whispered, "what are you doing?" "I'm buying us time," Jake whispered back. The alien ships held their positions, but no more shots were fired. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the harsh alien voice spoke again. This time the tone was different, less certain. "Human vessel, you will remain in position while we contact our superiors. Any attempt to leave will result in immediate destruction." Ryan looked at Jake with wide eyes. "Sir, I think it worked. They're not attacking yet," Amy added quietly. Jake nodded. His desperate bluff had bought them some time, but he knew it wouldn't last long. Soon the aliens would realize that the Liberty was exactly what it appeared to be, a small, lightly armed research ship with no backup coming. "Lisa, I need you to do something for me," Jake said quietly. "Can you modify our sensor array to make it look like we're more than we appear to be?" Lisa frowned. "What do you mean? Make us look bigger, more dangerous? Can you do that?" Lisa thought for a moment. "Maybe. We've got some mining equipment that puts out a lot of energy. If I reroute the power systems and modify the output patterns, I might be able to create some false readings. Do it, and be quick about it." As Lisa worked at her station, Jake stared at the alien ships on the view screen. He had started something that could either save his crew or get them all killed. But one thing was certain. The next few hours would determine the fate of humanity's first contact with an alien empire. The Liberty waited in space, surrounded by 7 massive warships, while 43 humans tried to figure out how to survive. Their first meeting with the galaxy's most powerful civilization. The waiting was the worst part. Captain Jake Martinez paced the bridge of the Liberty while his crew worked frantically at their stations. Outside, 7 massive alien warships held their position in a perfect circle around the small human vessel. Each one could destroy them in seconds, but for now, they were holding their fire. "How's that sensor modification coming along, Lisa?" Jake asked quietly. Lisa Thompson looked up from her engineering console, sweat beading on her forehead. "Almost done, Captain. I've rerouted power from our mining laser array and the deep space scanner. When I activate it, our energy signature should look like something much bigger than a research ship." "Good, Ryan. Any word from our new friends out there?" Ryan Clark shook his head. "Nothing yet, sir, but I'm picking up a lot of chatter between their ships. The computer can't translate much of it, but they sound ... confused." Dr. Amy Foster was studying the alien transmissions from her science station. "Captain, I've been analyzing their communication patterns. These aliens seem very structured, very formal. Everything they say follows strict protocols." "What does that tell us?" Jake asked. "It tells us they're not used to situations they can't immediately understand and control. Your bluff caught them completely off guard." Jake nodded. That was exactly what he had hoped for. But he knew the confusion wouldn't last long. Soon the aliens would demand proof of his claims, and then what would he do? "Captain," Lisa called out, "the modifications are ready. When you give the word, I can make us look like a much bigger threat." "Do it." Lisa's fingers danced over her controls. The Liberty's engines hummed louder as power was redirected through the modified systems. On the bridge displays, Jake could see their energy output spike dramatically. "That should get their attention," Lisa said with a grim smile. It did. Within moments, alarms started blaring on the alien ships. Jake could see them moving into defensive positions, their weapons charging up with bright energy. "They're definitely seeing something they don't like," Ryan reported. "Their communications are getting very excited." Jake took a deep breath. It was time for phase 2 of his desperate plan. "Ryan, open a channel to the alien fleet. Broadcast on all frequencies." "Channel open, sir." Jake stood in the center of the bridge, trying to project the confidence of a man who held all the cards instead of someone who was making everything up as he went along. "This is Captain Martinez of the human diplomatic vessel Liberty. I see your ships have detected our enhanced defensive systems." He paused, letting that sink in. "I want to make something very clear. The Liberty is not a warship. We are a diplomatic courier sent ahead to establish peaceful contact with new civilizations. However, we are not defenseless, and we are not alone." Amy looked at him with wide eyes. Jake was really going all in with this bluff. "Our main battle fleet is already en route to this location," Jake continued, his voice steady and confident. "They will arrive within 72 hours. I strongly suggest we use this time to establish proper diplomatic relations rather than creating a situation that could lead to unnecessary conflict." Jake signaled Ryan to close the channel. The bridge was dead silent. "Captain," Lisa whispered, "did you just claim we have a battle fleet coming?" "Yes, I did, but we don't have a battle fleet coming." "No, we don't." Amy shook her head in amazement. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the craziest." "Probably both," Jake admitted. "But right now, it's the only thing keeping us alive." The alien response came faster than expected. The harsh voice that had threatened them before now sounded less certain, more careful. "Human vessel, you will provide proof of your diplomatic status and the location of your approaching fleet." Jake had expected this. "Ryan, send them our exploration charter and scientific credentials. Make it look as official as possible." "Yes, sir." Ryan worked at his station for several minutes, formatting their documents to look impressive. "Sending now." While they waited for the aliens to review their information, Jake gathered his senior officers around the captain's chair. "Listen carefully," he said in a low voice. "We're walking on very thin ice here. These aliens are clearly used to being the biggest threat in any situation. The fact that they haven't destroyed us yet means our bluff is working. But it won't work forever." "What's the plan, Captain?" Lisa asked. "We keep them guessing. Every time they ask for something, we give them just enough information to maintain the illusion that we're more than we appear to be, but not enough for them to figure out the truth." Amy frowned. "But what happens in 72 hours when your imaginary fleet doesn't show up?" Jake had been thinking about that. "Hopefully by then we'll have figured out a way to turn this into real diplomatic contact, or we'll be dead, one or the other." "That's not very reassuring," Ryan said. "I'm not in the business of providing false comfort," Jake replied. "I'm in the business of keeping you all alive." The alien voice spoke again, and this time Jake could hear something different in the tone. Uncertainty, maybe even a little fear. "Human Captain Martinez, we have reviewed your credentials. Your documents are ... unusual. We are not familiar with your Earth Alliance or your diplomatic protocols." Jake smiled grimly. Of course they weren't familiar with the Earth Alliance. He had made it up 5 minutes ago. "That is understandable," Jake replied calmly. "Humanity has only recently begun expanding beyond our core systems. This is our first contact in this region of space. We prefer to establish peaceful relations whenever possible, but we are prepared to defend our interests if necessary." He was improvising now, building on the bluff with each sentence. "The Liberty carries full diplomatic authority to negotiate on behalf of the Earth Alliance. I am authorized to establish formal relations, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts. There was a long pause. Jake could almost hear the aliens discussing what to do next. "Captain," Amy whispered, "our sensors are picking up some kind of high-energy transmission from the largest alien ship. They're sending a message somewhere else." Jake nodded. The aliens were contacting their superiors, just as he had hoped. The longer this situation went on, the more likely it was that high aliens would get involved, and higher-ranking aliens might be more interested in diplomacy than the military commanders who had first encountered them. "Human Captain," the alien voice said, "we are contacting our Imperial Command for instructions regarding your ... situation. You will remain in position until we receive orders." "Of course," Jake replied smoothly. "We are happy to wait for proper diplomatic channels to be established. However, I should remind you that our fleet will arrive in approximately 7 hours. It would be best if we had established peaceful relations by then." After the channel closed, Lisa looked at Jake with admiration and terror in equal measure. "Captain, you realize you just threatened an entire alien empire with a fleet that doesn't exist?" "Yes, I did, and they believed you. So far, Amy was studying her instruments." "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy buildups from several of their ships. I think they're charging their weapon systems." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Are they preparing to attack?" "I don't think so. I think they're preparing to defend themselves against our imaginary fleet." Ryan looked up from his communications console. "Sir, I'm picking up transmissions between the alien ships. The computer is translating fragments. They're talking about unknown human capabilities and potential threat assessment and request immediate reinforcements." Jake stared at the view screen. His desperate bluff had worked better than he had ever imagined. The aliens weren't just taking him seriously, they were actually afraid of him. "My God," Amy whispered, "what have we started?" Jake didn't have an answer for that. He had started this as a simple attempt to buy time and keep his crew alive. But now it was becoming something much bigger and much more dangerous. Outside, the 7 alien warships maintained their defensive positions around the tiny human research vessel, waiting for orders from their empire and preparing for a battle fleet that would never come. Far across the galaxy, on the dark world of Zelaria Prime, Emperor Zalkovec sat on his throne of black metal and listened to the most disturbing report he had received in 50 years of rule. The massive throne room was filled with his most trusted advisors, all of them looking nervous and uncertain. "Tell me again," the Emperor said, his voice like grinding stone. "Exactly what happened at the border." Fleet Admiral Vexdale stepped forward, his forearms clasped behind his back in the traditional military position. "Your Imperial Majesty, our border patrol encountered an unknown vessel claiming to represent something called the Earth Alliance. The ship appeared to be a simple scout craft, but our sensors detected energy patterns we have never seen before." "And this human captain threatened you?" "Not exactly threatened, Majesty. He was very calm, very confident. He claimed to have diplomatic authority and warned that hostile actions would be considered acts of war against his people." Emperor Zalkovec leaned forward on his throne. In 500 years of Zelarian expansion, no one had ever spoken to his fleet commanders with such confidence. Every species they encountered either surrendered immediately or was quickly destroyed. This was something new. "What do we know about these humans?" Intelligence Director Sekmer stepped out of the shadows where he always lurked during court sessions. His pale skin and large black eyes made him look like a living ghost. "Very little, Majesty. This is our first contact with their species. However, several things concern me greatly, such as their technology is completely unknown to us. Their ship's energy signature suggests power systems we cannot identify. Either they are far more advanced than they appear, or they are using technology we have never encountered." The Emperor's advisor for military affairs, General Korthax, spoke up. "Majesty, it could be a trick. One small ship against 7 of our heavy cruisers. No species would be that confident unless they had significant backup." "My thoughts exactly," Sekmer agreed. The human captain claimed that their main battle fleet was en route. He gave a specific time frame of 72 hours. This suggests either remarkable confidence or complete insanity. Emperor Zalkovex had ruled the Zalarian Empire through fear and overwhelming force. Every species in their 12-star systems had learned to bow before Zalarian power. But this human captain had not bowed. He had not even seemed afraid. What else? The Emperor demanded. The humans referred to multiple home systems and colonial territories, Sekmar continued. This suggests a civilization of significant size. They also mentioned trade agreements and mutual defense pacts, implying they have contact with other species. Other species? General Korthax looked alarmed. We have no records of any unknown civilizations in that sector. Exactly, said with a thin smile. Which means either our intelligence networks have completely failed, or these humans come from much farther away than we thought, possibly from beyond our sphere of knowledge entirely. The Emperor stood up from his throne, his massive frame casting long shadows across the throne room. At nearly 8 feet tall, he was an imposing figure even by Zalarian standards. How many ships do we have in that sector? Currently 7, Majesty Admiral Vextel replied, but I have already sent orders for additional reinforcements. Not enough, the Emperor said firmly. If these humans are as confident as they appear, they must have significant military power backing them up. We cannot afford to underestimate an unknown threat. He began pacing back and forth in front of his throne, something he only did when facing serious problems. Send orders to all fleet commanders. I want every available ship moved to the border sector immediately. Every ship, Majesty. General Korthax looked surprised. That would leave our other territories with minimal defense. Our other territories are not facing an unknown alien threat, the Emperor snapped. These humans have appeared from nowhere with technology we do not understand and confidence that suggests massive military backing. We will not be caught unprepared. Intelligence. Director Sekmar stepped forward again. Majesty, if I may suggest caution, we do not yet know the full extent of their capabilities. A massive military buildup might be seen as an act of aggression. Let them see it as aggression. The Emperor replied coldly. Better to be prepared for war and not need it than to be caught defenseless against superior forces. Meanwhile, aboard the Liberty, Captain Jake Martinez was beginning to realize that his bluff might have worked too well. Dr. Amy Foster had been monitoring alien communications for the past 6 hours, and what she was hearing made her increasingly worried. Captain, she said quietly, I think we have a problem. Jake looked up from the tactical display he had been studying. Just one problem. I can think of several. The aliens are calling in more ships. A lot more ships. I'm detecting at least 50 vessels moving toward this system from various locations. Lisa Thompson looked up from her engineering station. 50 ships to deal with us. That's not the worst part, Amy continued. Based on what I can translate from their communications, they think we represent some kind of massive galactic threat. They're treating this as a potential invasion. Jake felt the blood drain from his face. An invasion. They keep referring to unknown human capabilities and potential overwhelming force. I think they believe your story about the Earth Alliance being much bigger than it actually is. Ryan Clark turned around in his chair. Captain, I just intercepted a transmission that got through the translation barrier. The aliens are mobilizing their entire military fleet. Every ship they have is being ordered to this location. Jake sat down heavily in his captain's chair. When he had started this bluff, he had just been trying to buy enough time to negotiate some kind of peaceful solution. Now it seemed like he had accidentally convinced an entire alien empire that humanity was about to launch a massive invasion. How many ships are we talking about? He asked quietly. Based on the communications I've intercepted, Amy said probably close to 200 warships. The bridge fell silent. 200 alien warships, all coming to deal with one small human research vessel and a fleet that didn't exist. This is getting out of hand, Lisa said. What are we going to do when 200 enemy ships show up and there's still no human fleet to back up our claims? Jake was thinking frantically. The situation had spiraled far beyond anything he had imagined. His simple bluff to save his crew had somehow triggered what appeared to be the largest military mobilization in alien history. Captain, Ryan said hesitantly, maybe we should just tell them the truth. Admit that we're just explorers and hope they'll be merciful. No, Jake said firmly. If we admit we've been lying to them, they'll probably destroy us out of anger and embarrassment. And even if they don't kill us, we'll have made humanity look weak and dishonest in our first contact with another civilization. So what do we do? Jake stood up and walked to the view screen, looking out at the 7 alien ships that were still maintaining their defensive positions around the Liberty. Soon those 7 ships would become 200 ships, all waiting for a human fleet that would never arrive. We stick to the plan, he said finally. We maintain the bluff and hope we can find a way to turn this into real diplomacy before the situation gets completely out of control. Amy shook her head. Captain, I don't think you understand what we've started here. This isn't just about our ship anymore. You've accidentally convinced an entire alien empire that humanity is a major galactic power. When they find out the truth, they won't find out the truth, Jake said with more confidence than he felt. Because we're going to figure out how to make this work. But even as he said it, Jake wondered if he had just doomed not only his crew, but possibly all of humanity with his desperate gamble. 3 days had passed since the first contact, and the space around the Liberty had become the most dangerous place in the galaxy. What started as 7 alien warships had grown into the largest military fleet in Zolarian history. Over 200 massive vessels now surrounded the tiny human research ship, their weapons trained on the small craft that had somehow triggered an empire-wide panic. Captain Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the Liberty, looking at the tactical display that showed red dots in every direction. Each dot represented a ship that could destroy his vessel with a single shot. His crew worked quietly at their stations, all of them trying to stay calm despite the impossible situation they found themselves in. Final count is 212 ships, reported Steve Parker, the ship's navigation officer. He was a quiet man who usually spent his time plotting courses between star systems. But now he was tracking the movement of an entire alien armada. They're arranged in defensive formations, but they're all pointing their weapons at us. Any sign of the human fleet they're expecting? Lisa Thompson asked from her engineering station. Her joke fell flat in the tense atmosphere of the bridge. Jake said quietly. That's not helping. Dr. Amy Forster looked up from her science station, where she had been studying alien communications for the past 72 hours. Captain, I've been analyzing their behavior patterns. These aliens are genuinely terrified of us. Canithard! Ryan Clark looked confused. We're one small ship surrounded by their entire military. What could they possibly be afraid of? That's exactly the problem, Amy explained. From their perspective, we're showing impossible confidence. One ship against 200, and we're still here, still calm, still making diplomatic demands. In their experience, that kind of confidence only comes from overwhelming hidden strength. Jake nodded grimly. Amy's analysis matched his own thoughts. The Zolarians were used to being the strongest force in any situation. When they encountered something they couldn't immediately understand and control, they assumed it must be more powerful than them. Captain, Steve said, we've got a problem. The aliens have set up a communication jamming field around the entire system. Even if Earth did send a rescue mission, they wouldn't be able to find us. And speaking of rescue missions, Lisa added, our supplies are running low. We've got maybe 4 more days of food and water for the crew. Jake felt the weight of command pressing down on him. 43 people were depending on his decisions, and every choice he made seemed to make their situation worse. His desperate bluff had bought them time, but now that time was running out. Captain Amy said suddenly, I'm picking up a transmission from the alien flagship. It's different from their usual communications, more formal. Put it through. The harsh alien voice that filled the bridge was different from the one they had been hearing. This voice carried more authority, more age, and much more threat. Human vessel Liberty, this is Emperor Zalkovix of the Zolarian Empire. I am speaking to you directly from the Imperial flagship Eternal Dominion. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. The Emperor himself had come to deal with them. That meant the situation was even more serious than he had thought. Your Majesty, Jake replied, trying to keep his voice steady. This is Captain Jake Martinez. I am honored to speak with the leader of your empire. Captain Martinez! Your presence here has created a significant disturbance. My military advisors believe you represent a threat to Imperial security. However, I am willing to discuss peaceful solutions if you can provide proof of your claims. Jake knew this moment would come eventually. The Emperor wanted proof of the Earth Alliance, proof of the approaching human fleet, proof of everything Jake had claimed over the past 3 days. The problem was that none of it existed. Your Majesty, I understand your concerns. However, I am not authorized to reveal sensitive military information about our fleet movements or defensive capabilities. Such information could compromise our security. It was a weak response, and Jake knew it. But it was the only thing he could say without admitting that he had been lying from the beginning. Captain Martinez, the Emperor's voice became colder. My patience is not unlimited. You have claimed diplomatic authority, but you refuse to provide proper credentials. You have warned of military consequences, but you show no evidence of military support. My advisors believe you are attempting to deceive us. The bridge fell silent. This was the moment Jake had been dreading. The Emperor was starting to see through the bluff. Your Majesty, Jake said carefully, I assure you that all my statements have been truthful. The Earth Alliance takes peaceful relations very seriously, but we also take threats against our diplomatic personnel very seriously. Then where is your fleet, Captain? Your 72 hours have passed. Where are the ships you promised would arrive? Jake's mind raced. He needed to buy more time, but he was running out of excuses. Our fleet commanders are cautious, Your Majesty. When they detected the massive military buildup in this system, they moved to a safe distance to evaluate the situation. They are waiting for my signal that diplomatic contact has been successful. Amy looked at Jake with amazement. Even under this pressure, he was still finding ways to extend the bluff. You expect me to believe that your fleet is hiding somewhere nearby? The Emperor asked. Not hiding, Your Majesty. Waiting. There is a difference. Our ships are prepared to enter this system peacefully for diplomatic meetings, or they are prepared to respond to threats against our diplomatic mission. The choice is yours. There was a long pause. Jake could almost hear the Emperor discussing the situation with his advisors. Captain Martinez, the Emperor said finally, I propose a test of your claims. You say your fleet is nearby and ready to respond to threats. Very well. I will order one of my ships to fire a single shot at your vessel. If your fleet is real, they will respond. If they do not respond, then I will know you have been deceiving us. Jake felt like he had been punched in the stomach. The Emperor was calling his bluff in the most direct way possible. There was no way to talk around this demand. Your Majesty, Jake said, trying to keep his voice from shaking. Threatening a diplomatic vessel would be an act of war. Are you prepared for the consequences of such an action? I am prepared for whatever consequences arise from learning the truth. The Emperor replied coldly. Amy grabbed Jake's arm. Captain, what are we going to do? Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. 43 people who had trusted him to keep them safe. Lisa, who had 2 children back on Earth. Ryan, who was barely out of the academy. Steve, who had spent his whole career navigating peaceful exploration missions. Amy, who had dreamed of making peaceful contact with alien civilizations. Your Majesty, Jake said, making one last desperate attempt. If you fire on this vessel, you will be starting a war that could destroy both our civilizations. Is that really what you want? What I want, the Emperor replied, is the truth. You have 30 seconds to provide evidence of your fleet, or I will order my ships to fire. Jake stared at the tactical display showing 212 alien warships. In 30 seconds, one of them would fire on the Liberty. If no human fleet appeared to defend them, the Emperor would know that everything Jake had said was a lie. And then Jake was certain all 212 ships would open fire at once. Captain, Ryan whispered, what do we do? Jake took a deep breath. He had run out of tricks, run out of time, and run out of options. The greatest bluff in human history was about to be called, and when it was, his crew would pay the price for his desperate gamble. I don't know, he admitted quietly. I honestly don't know. 20 seconds. Captain Jake Martinez watched the countdown timer on his display as it moved toward 0. In 20 seconds, Emperor Zalkorvex would order one of his ships to fire on the Liberty. when no human fleet appeared to defend them. The Emperor would know that Jake had been lying for 4 days straight. "Captain," Dr. Amy Foster said quietly, "I have an idea." Jake turned to look at her. Amy had been studying alien communications and behavior since their first contact. If anyone could find a way out of this impossible situation, it would be her. "Talk fast," Jake said. "We've got 18 seconds. What if we stop lying and start telling a different kind of truth?" Amy asked quickly. "What do you mean?" 10 seconds, Captain," Ryan Clark called out from his station. Amy moved closer to Jake. "Trust me, when he calls for proof, don't try to bluff anymore. Tell him exactly what we really are, but frame it differently." 5 seconds, Ryan said, his voice tight with fear. "Do it," Jake decided. The harsh voice of Emperor Zalkovex filled the bridge. "Time is up, Captain Martinez. Where is your fleet?" Jake took a deep breath and made the biggest gamble of his life. Instead of continuing his bluff, he decided to trust Amy's instincts completely. "Your Majesty," Jake said calmly, "you're asking the wrong question." "What? You want to know where our fleet is? But that's not the question you should be asking. The question you should be asking is, while we sent a single small ship to make first contact with your empire, there was silence from the alien flagship." Jake could feel his crew staring at him in confusion and terror. "Explain," the Emperor said coldly. "Your Majesty, the Liberty is not a warship. We are exactly what we appear to be, a research vessel with 43 scientists and explorers. We came here to study new worlds and learn about alien life." Amy nodded encouragingly. Jake was following her suggestion, but he still wasn't sure where she was going with this. "But here's what you should find truly disturbing," Jake continued. "We are not representatives of some small local government. The Earth Alliance spans multiple galaxies. To us, your entire empire is just one small, interesting civilization in a tiny corner of space that we happen to discover." The Bridge of the Liberty was completely silent. Even Jake wasn't sure what he was saying anymore, but Amy was smiling, so he kept going. "We don't send battle fleets to make first contact with civilizations like yours because we don't need to. One research ship is sufficient to evaluate whether a species is worth establishing formal relations with. You're claiming that we are insignificant to you." The Emperor's voice carried a note of disbelief. "Not insignificant," Jake replied. "Interesting. Your empire controls 12 star systems. That's impressive for a local civilization. We're always interested in studying how smaller societies organize themselves." Amy was nodding vigorously. Jake was starting to understand her strategy. Instead of claiming that humanity was a military threat, he was claiming that humanity was so vast and powerful that the entire Zellarian Empire was just a curiosity to them. "Your Majesty," Jake continued, "when you threatened our research vessel, we didn't call for military backup because we didn't think we needed it. We assumed that any civilization advanced enough for space travel would be reasonable enough for peaceful contact." "You assumed?" The Emperor's voice was getting louder. "Yes, perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps your civilization is not as advanced as we hoped." There was a long pause. Jake could hear alien voices arguing in the background of the transmission. "Captain Martinez," the Emperor said slowly, "you claim to represent a civilization that spans multiple galaxies." "I don't claim it, Your Majesty. It's simply the truth. Earth is one research station in a network that covers distances you probably can't imagine. We have teams studying thousands of civilizations across dozens of galaxies, and you see us as just another subject for study." Jake looked at Amy, who nodded. "That was our original plan. Yes, a peaceful research mission to learn about your culture, your technology, your social structures. We're particularly interested in how smaller civilizations develop military hierarchies." The insult was subtle but clear. Jake was calling the Empire a smaller civilization and suggesting that their military buildup was just an interesting research topic. Smaller civilization. The Emperor's voice was dangerous now. "Your Majesty, please don't take offense. 12-star systems is quite impressive for a local government. We've studied many civilizations your size. Some of them have been very interesting," Amy whispered in Jake's ear. Keep going. You're making them question everything they think they know about their place in the universe. Captain Martinez, the Emperor said, if your claims are true, why haven't we detected any evidence of this vast galactic civilization you describe? Jake smiled. This was the perfect question. Your Majesty, your technology can barely detect ships in your own star system. Do you really think you could detect civilizations operating on a galactic scale? Our sensors are the most advanced in known space, the Emperor protested. Known to whom? Jake asked gently. Your Majesty, with respect, your known space is 12 star systems. The galaxy contains over 400 billion stars. Your empire represents about 0.0000003% of this single galaxy, and we operate across multiple galaxies. The numbers were real, and they were staggering. Jake could hear the effect they were having on the alien communications. You're saying that our entire empire is meaningless on a galactic scale? The Emperor asked quietly. Not meaningless, Jake corrected. Just ... local. Your Majesty, imagine you discovered a small village with interesting customs. Would you send your entire military to conquer that village? Or would you send a few researchers to study it peacefully? We would send researchers, the Emperor admitted. Exactly. That's what we did. We sent the Liberty to study your civilization peacefully. When you responded with military threats, we were surprised. Most civilizations we encounter are eager to learn about the larger galaxy. Amy leaned over to Jake's ear. Tell him about trade and cooperation. Your Majesty, Jake continued, we're not interested in conquest or conflict. We're interested in knowledge and peaceful cooperation. Civilizations that prove themselves to be reasonable and peaceful sometimes receive invitations to join larger galactic communities. There are benefits to such relationships. What kind of benefits? The Emperor asked. Jake was making this up as he went along, but Amy kept nodding. Advanced technology, medical knowledge, cultural exchange, access to galactic trade networks. Some of our partner civilizations have expanded far beyond their original boundaries through peaceful cooperation. There was a very long pause. Jake could hear intense discussions happening on the alien flagship. Captain Martinez, the Emperor said finally, assuming your claims are true, what would be required for such a relationship? Jake felt a surge of hope. The Emperor was actually considering peaceful contact instead of destruction. First, no more military threats against our research personnel, Jake said firmly. Second, we would need to complete our cultural and technological assessment of your civilization. Third, your empire would need to demonstrate that it can engage in peaceful diplomacy instead of defaulting to military intimidation. And if we meet these requirements, then we would recommend your civilization for inclusion in our partnership network. Of course, the decision would ultimately be made by our leadership councils, but our recommendation would carry significant weight, Amy whispered. Perfect. You've turned this from a military confrontation into a job interview. The Emperor was quiet for several minutes. When he finally spoke, his voice was completely different. Less threatening, more thoughtful. Captain Martinez, we appear to have begun our relationship poorly. Perhaps we could discuss how to proceed more appropriately. Jake smiled at his crew. Your Majesty, I believe that would be an excellent start. 6 months later, Captain Jake Martinez stood in the newly constructed diplomatic station orbiting Kepler-4 for Tubi through the main viewport. He could see the Earthship Harmony approaching with the real diplomatic mission. Dr. Amy Foster was now the station's chief of xenological research, studying Zellarian culture and helping to establish the peaceful relationship that had grown out of their desperate first contact. The Zellarians, humbled by their encounter with what they believed was a vast galactic civilization, had completely changed their approach to dealing with other species. Instead of conquest and intimidation, they now sought peaceful cooperation and cultural exchange. Captain Amy said, joining him at the viewport, do you ever regret not telling them the complete truth? Jake thought about it. We did tell them the truth, Amy, just not the truth they expected to hear. Earth really is part of something larger than their empire. We really are interested in peaceful cooperation, and they really do have the potential to be part of something bigger than themselves. even if that something bigger is still mostly just us. Jake smiled. Give it time. By the time they realize how small humanity really is, maybe we'll have actually grown into the civilization I described. Besides, look what they've accomplished in just 6 months. They've stopped their military expansion, established peaceful contact with 3 other species, and started sharing their technology freely.